Kick off and welcome you to our first 2026 Talking Cyber webinar series. So I'm your host, Charlie Wood, Director of Contractor Solutions at Head Resourcing. For those who don't know us, we're a specialist technology, digital and transformation recruitment agency headquartered in Edinburgh. I'd also like to introduce our guest speaker today, Stephen Faull, who will be talking to us about cybersecurity culture and resilience. So Steve was recently recognised as Cybersecurity Leader of the Year at the 2026 Scottish Cyber Awards and is the Technology Director at Allied Vehicles, Europe's largest supplier of wheelchair accessible and special purpose vehicles. Steve spent the last 25 years working across multiple industry sectors for a range of employers, which have included Ford Motor Company, the Daily Mail, Merrill Lynch, Agreco, and William Grant & Sons. It's my pleasure to hand you over to Steve.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Thanks for the introduction. And thank you, everybody, for joining. So I'm going to spend the next kind of 20 to 25 minutes talking to you about how we build a strong cyber culture. And I'm going to make the talk based on the journey that we've had here at Allied Vehicles. So we've come from a place where the cyber culture was really kind of non-existent. We didn't have a lot of cyber capability at all within the organisation. We then went to a situation where cybersecurity was most definitely an IT issue. And over the course of the last few years, we've evolved that. And we've got a position now where we have a culture where every single person in the organisation feels that they have a level of responsibility for keeping our systems, our data, and our customer data safe. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Allied as a business. So Allied is a massively ambitious family business. We're based in Glasgow. We're in Postle Park, which is it's one of the rougher areas of Glasgow. And even though my mum's side of the family comes from Postle Park, and I spent a lot of time in Postle Park as a kid, I'd never ever heard of Allied until I came into the recruitment process. But I truly believe Allied is one of Scotland's real hidden gems. So we have 9 businesses that sit under the Allied umbrella, most of which are traditional motor trade. So we have sales, service, body shop, repairs and rentals. But the main revenue generating stream is wheelchair accessible vehicles. So we take a standard vehicle from Ford, from Peugeot, from Volkswagen, and we'll convert that for a wheelchair user. We are Europe's biggest and best, of course, converter of these vehicles. And we employ around 800 people in 9 locations across the UK and Europe. And we're continually growing, massively entrepreneurial here at Allied. So our international growth is a big area of focus for us right now. I've been with the company for 5 years. And I think it's fair to say that prior to me joining Allied, there had been very little prior investment in IT and certainly very little in the world of cybersecurity. From a maturity standpoint, there wasn't an awful lot around processes and procedures. So we've been on this business digital transformation journey, and there's still masses for us to do, but we've seen a real change as far as technology is concerned in the business, but also a massive change in the way that people think about and approach cybersecurity. And I think to evidence that, we, in 2025, attained the ISO 27001 accreditation, so the gold standard for data and information security. And that's something that a few years previously would have been really quite unimaginable for the business. So it's a good indicator of how far we've come. Excuse me. So I think it's fair to say that the cyber incident that took place at Arnold Clark was one of the biggest catalysts for change at Allied. I came back from my Christmas holidays in January 2023 to find a very concerned family and a very concerned operations board worried about cybersecurity and how at risk were we at Allied and how could we mitigate those risks, and if we had a similar situation happen to us, how could we keep the business running? Now, this was back in the days where cybersecurity was most definitely seen as an IT responsibility. So we were working as a team to build a decent security posture, but the breach at Arnold Clark really brought things to a totally different level within Allied. All of a sudden, cybersecurity had become a real topic of interest for the family and the board, which really made the conversations around budget for cyber initiatives become an awful lot easier. That I've got an absolutely amazing team at Allied, but at that time we had very little specific cybersecurity skills within the team, and we're a very lean team, and there's always loads going on, so we don't have lots of free resource. So to augment the team and to bring in some of those specialist skills, we work with a couple of strategic partners, and two of the key partners that we've worked with for a long time are the Cyber Fraud Centre and Barrier Networks. So the Cyber Fraud Centre add a massive amount of value for us. We get great advice from them. We do lots and lots of training exercises with them. But one of the benefits, the real benefits that we get for the engagement with the Cyber Fraud Centre is working with their ethical hacking team. So we use their ethical hackers to run pen tests against every element of our network, and for them to highlight any areas for improvement or highlight any vulnerabilities that we might have. And with Barrier Networks, again, we've worked with them for a long time. They help us in many different areas. But one thing I do is I get Barrier to run a cyber risk threat assessment exercise for me every single year. And I get so much value from that. There's three kind of main areas that delivers a lot of benefit for us. So the first one is that the risk assessment exercise involves conversations with myself, our finance director, and our managing director. And that's really important because it allows the CISO from Barrier to get a feel for what's on the mind of the exec, what's worrying some of the directors, and probably most importantly, what does the appetite for risk at Allied look like? The second element of the exercise is really technology focused. So the specialists from Barrier Networks work with the technical guys in my team, and they'll run the rule over many elements of our cyber security posture, if you like. So they'll look at a lot of the configurations around the firewalls. They'll look at the type of, approaches that we're taking to all the different elements from a cyber point of view. And then all of that, thirdly, gets combined into this report that they produce for us. And that helps us recognise where we're well equipped to deal with different challenges to the business from a cyber point of view. But it also gives us a view of where we might have opportunities for improvement and maybe where we want to focus our efforts, where we can get the biggest bang for our buck. So I take the results of the pen testing report and the risk assessment report, and I roll those together to build a cybersecurity roadmap for the organisation. I then take that roadmap to our board. I explain to them all the benefits that these initiatives will bring for us. I talk about what it's going to cost us, and then I try to get approval to go ahead and implement that roadmap. And when I do that, I take that back out to the whole of the organisation, and I'll talk about that. I'll talk about communications in a later slide, but I'll talk to the whole organisation about what we're doing to help keep them safe and to get a bit of buy-in. Sometimes there's some things that will impact the way that we work. So I want to make sure that everyone's aware of that, why we're doing that, and why that will be necessary. And then I'll take all this back, work with my team, and we'll build an implementation plan on how we're going to take these initiatives, bring them to life, either ourselves or working with partners, and then how we're going to go and deliver those projects over the course of the year. And when I look back, this drive from the top, it's the support from the highest levels of the business that's made a massive difference to being able to create this really strong cyber awareness and this really great culture at Allied. It was actually my managing director who pushed us to go the extra mile and work towards the ISO 27001 accreditation. And that's been brilliant. And I mean, it's made an absolutely massive difference to the business, not just from a cybersecurity point of view, but just from the way that we approach problems, the way that we work. But there's no doubt, I mean, it's a mammoth task to go and get that accreditation. We had a core team of 5 who worked really hard, across IT and audit. So we did really the majority of the heavy lifting that was involved in getting that accreditation. But there's absolutely no doubt every single element of the business was involved in making that happen. And that builds real cohesion across the organisation and was a really great foundation for creating a brilliant cyber culture. So going to talk about communication next. I think one of my slides, the earlier versions, it was like communication, because there's no doubt this is such an important element of building a really strong cyber-aware culture. You just cannot communicate the importance of cybersecurity enough. And there's a view that says, you're not really being successful, you're not really gaining traction with your communication until such times as you start hearing people quoting back the messages that you've been trying to get out there into the business. So I've spent the last couple of years continuously banging the cybersecurity drum at every possible opportunity, to such an extent that I'm kind of boring myself with these messages. But in all honesty, it's one of the things that you really have to do. You need to communicate all the time just to try and get that buy-in across the whole of the business. And I use multiple channels. So blog posts. So every month I send out a blog post to the organisation via email, via our company intranet. And that's all about me letting people know what we're doing as an IT team and how we're progressing with various initiatives. But I always make a point of having something in there that's cyber related. Use it as an opportunity to get the message across. It might be a new initiative that we're working on. It might have been something that we've completed. It might be something specific around awards. But anything at all that just continues to get that message out there. I use videos. So here at Allied, we do something called Directors' Diaries. It's managed by our internal comms team. So one of the directors will create a diary that's shared again on the company intranet every week. There's always loads going on at Allied, so there's always lots to talk about in these business updates. And when it's my turn to do a director's diary, I do the business updates, and then again, I get a message across that relates to something we're doing in the world of cybersecurity. I send out emails, so not quite so often, a bit more ad hoc, but whenever there's maybe a global element, a global political element that's taking place, and there's loads of these been happening, especially since Donald Trump came to power. Then, when we're looking at our various news feeds and we're seeing that there's lots of cyber activity coming from Russia, then I'll send a message out making people aware of the type of threats that we're seeing as being prevalent and making sure that people can be as vigilant as possible and aware of the type of threats that are coming down the line. And then we also leverage, the fact that it's not just the businesses that are being hit by cyber criminals, and at people's day-to-day life, there's so much cyber fraud that's taking place. So all of the lessons that we're sharing, all the learnings, all the education that we're giving to people in the organisation, we reiterate the fact that they can use all this additional knowledge that they're gaining in their personal lives, and they can use it to help their families stay safe from the threat of cyber fraud. Every time you are in a position where you're trying to influence people, there's always an element of what's in it for me. So I think this kind of speaks to that and helps people get to a position where they've got that level of vigilance and they're looking for cyber threats in every element of their life, not just in the workplace. And I think that helps to build the capability that we all take advantage from within the organisation. And then finally, in communication, news stories. So taking advantage of what is happening out in the world. There's a saying that I'm not a massive fan of, but it's, don't let a good crisis go to waste. I think it does have relevance in the world of cyber security. So if you look at what happened or what's happened over the last 18 months, so Marks and Spencer's, the Co-op, Harrods, Jaguar Land Rover. These are all really high-profile cyber elements, that have been reported in the press. And I think everyone, when Marks and Spencers get hit by a cybersecurity incident, I think it brings it home to every single individual that if a trusted brand like that is susceptible to the threat, then everybody's susceptible to it. People recognise the impact it had on their profits, but they also, recognise the impact of empty shelves and their e-commerce business being shut down for a long time. So, that really drives people's awareness of the threats and the impact it can have to any business. And the GLR breach, quite well aligned to Allied and what we do. We've got a production floor where there's vehicles flowing through there, not the same scale as Jaguar Land Rover, but definitely similarities. And, people recognise that the GLR supply chain, people lose their jobs. So cyber attacks and ransomware in particular can have such an impact that it's impacting companies, but it can also impact individuals and their livelihood. So you can use all these messages to make people think very carefully about cybersecurity and help to drive that, view that, we need to be vigilant at all times. Moving on from this, so a bit about preparation. So one key element that's helped us to build a really strong cyber culture is incident response planning and desktop exercises. Now, we've been doing this for a few years, and it's helped develop a real sense of ownership across the business for all things that are cyber related. We started using the NCSC exercise in a box approach, so running some exercises based on their scenarios. First session we ever ran, I brought together a cross-functional team, so looked at everybody who would be impacted in a real-life scenario. So we had a team from IT, finance, HR, marketing, our internal comms teams, customer service and audit. Got them all together, we ran this exercise, and to be quite honest, it was an absolute train wreck. It became very apparent very quickly that we were really ill-prepared and had a massive amount of work to do. But it was quite strangely galvanising because it brought us all together. There was a real recognition of the amount of work that was going to be required to get us to where we needed to be. And, it was just going to be all about a bit of hard graft. And that's what we did. I created an action log out of that first exercise, assigned owners and signed due dates, and everyone went off and worked really hard. A couple of months later, we got back together, we ran another exercise. It was a little bit better, more actions, more work. And then we ran another, rinse and repeat. And, without fail, every couple of months, we ran another exercise. Craig, who's our head of audit, he took ownership of this. So we moved away from the NCSC exercise in a box approach, and he would create Allied specific scenarios for us. He concocted these brilliant exercises where nobody had any visibility of what it was going to be or what it was going to involve until such times as we all get into the room. We just kept going, kept adding actions, kept refining the plan, kept doing more and more of these exercises until one day we came out of one of them and we went, you know what? That was actually pretty good. Probably took us the best part of 12 to 18 months to get there. And then the big test. So we brought in an external party. Again, we used the Cyber and Fraud Centre and brought them in to run an exercise for us with the full operations board present. And the Cyber Fraud Centre, they pulled no punches whatsoever. They gave us a full-blown ransomware scenario. So we had to contend with that. There was plenty of injects across that couple of hours that we spent on that exercise, but it went really well. And it was a great example of the board recognising how impactful an attack could be for us, but also recognising the level of capability that we'd built as an organisation. And we've evolved this over time. We've become more confident. We've now started to incorporate some of the business continuity planning into our 2-monthly exercises. And we now alternate between incident response for cyber and business continuity. And then we've evolved it even further. So we've now gone to a world where we've got DR scenarios. We run them for the business and we take all the learnings, all the hypothetical stuff out of the desktop exercises, and we actually run them in the business. So the last exercise we ran was a full ransomware lockdown type scenario where we had no access to the network, no access to any laptops or servers. And the challenge was, we've got 4 hours and we need to get the business back up and running. And how are we going to make that happen? And that's a difficult thing to do. And I'll talk about that a little bit more at the end of the presentation. Training. So we've spent a massive amount of time and effort on training. I'll very quickly just run you through some of the things that we've done. We send out monthly training modules. So we use a module that's an add-on from Mindcast. These modules, it's 2 to 3 minute long videos and a question or two at the end of it. A little bit entertaining, keep people engaged, and we make sure that people follow up and do that training. So we make it mandatory. The managing director gives us massive support on that. So his view is, if I can make the time to do the cybersecurity training, then everyone else can make the time to do it. We've run externally led sessions so that the Cyber and Fraud Centre have come in on probably 3 or 4 different occasions, ran sessions for executive teams, ran the sessions for our accounting and finance team, more focused around the email business compromises and putting the safeguards in place to make sure that we've got processes that will support us and make sure that we're not making payments to or as the result of phishing style attacks. And then learn a little bit from learn a little bit from the learnings that we've had from real life data breaches and security incidents. So, like any other organisation, we follow Faull. So regardless of how much work you do and how well prepared you are, these incidents will take place. Just making sure that when they do, we go and we do a bit of a retrospective of that and bring those learnings back into the types of training or maybe some of the modules that we're sending out to people on a month-to-month basis. And then there's an element of building internal capability. So Derek, who's my cybersecurity specialist, he spent the last couple of years on a master's in cybersecurity at Strathclyde University. And we've got another member of the team, Callum, who's going to become Derek's understudy, and he's just about to undertake the master's programme at Strathclyde as well. So that makes a big difference. So coming to the end now, I'm just going to talk a little bit about resiliency. So, if you did face a cyber attack tomorrow, how confident are you that you could keep your business up and running? So I'll share with you what our approach has been. So I'm a big believer that the Amazons, the Microsofts, and the Googles of this world are always going to be far more secure than any other business. They're spending hundreds of millions every year on cybersecurity. We'd love to do that, but we've got limited budgets. Got to be careful about where we make our spend. So I'm a big fan of SaaS platforms and having all of our core applications hosted in the cloud. Minimises the dependency on what we have as far as on-premise services are concerned. So based on that, in a ransomware environment or a ransomware situation, we could leverage the fact that all our core systems are based in the cloud. So that scenario that we ran where we've got no network, we've got no servers, we've got no laptops. So what we're doing is we're using contingency laptops. So we've got a bank of 20 contingency laptops that are earmarked for key users within our organisation. So when we run the DR scenario, what we do is we get the contingency laptops out, we get them set up for these particular users. We'll use 5G routers in various areas of the business so that we've got some connectivity, and then we make sure we can get all these 20 individuals signed into these cloud applications and have a semblance of the business up and running quite quickly. And that seems to work well for us. If we were in a real life cyber situation, then what we would then be doing is looking to either go out and purchase additional laptops for more people within the organisation, or start to recycle some of the laptops that have been locked down previously, while we've still got our response partners looking at some of the forensics on our servers or on our network to work out how we actually bring those systems back to get us back to running 100% normal. So that's that, and I hope that's maybe useful to give you a bit of an indication of how you might deal with a scenario and build a bit of resilience within your organisation. So in summary, there's no overnight success, there's no silver bullet. It's a lot of hard work. I've got a fantastic team here at Allied who've worked their socks off to create this great cyber culture that we have. The backing of the family and the board of directors and the help from our partners has been incredibly important. Using incident response planning. If you're not doing it, just start doing it. If you are doing it, keep on doing it. Build the confidence, create a bit of muscle memory around it. And when you're ready, take it out of the boardroom and take it out of the hypothetical and go and put it into practice. Give yourself a proper test and get a view of how your readiness really stacks up, even though hopefully it's something that you never ever have to put into practice. And that's me. Charlie, back to yourself.
Fantastic, Steve. That was great. We have a few questions that have come in, so I'll just take you through them if you're good with that. We've still got a bit of time.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that I had was actually how you are measuring the effectiveness of the cyber awareness training. Do you measure that in any way to make sure employee behaviours are changing?
So one of the things that I never mentioned in the presentation, but we do take advantage of, is we do phishing simulations. So, we measure the success of the phishing simulations. So that gives us a decent indication of how successful the training is. There's lots of KPIs around the completion of the training. And with every piece of training that we do, there are test questions, like quizzes. At the end of the little video modules, so we can get a view also of how much or how aware people are. Are they getting the right answers to the quizzes, and then doubling that up with how well are we doing as far as the phishing simulations are concerned.
Brilliant. That makes sense. We've done something similar here, so that's good to hear. So other questions. Antonio has written in, what are some practical ways to reduce user error without adding too much friction to day-to-day work?
So user error, I don't know if this is maybe around the impact on users and
I think so, yeah. Some of the
striking the balance between being as safe as you possibly can, but not disrupting the way the business runs too much.
Exactly that.
What we try to do is we try to minimise the friction that cybersecurity causes. We're very aware, we're very pragmatic. So we take an approach where we want things to work as easily for people as they possibly can. I think a really good example of this is, so we implemented a data security platform. So we used Varonis, and that provided data classification for us, which was great. So that was automated. But then any brand new documents that get created within the organisation, there's a requirement for the person creating that document to classify it. And that involves them saving an extra step in the process of saving that document, which is a little bit of a nuisance to people. But we took the time, we explained why we were doing that and the benefits that we would get as an organisation from doing that. And, I think over the course of time, so, people maybe are a little bit dissatisfied that they've got to do this, but they recognise the value it's going to add. And then over the course of the time, it becomes, it just becomes another thing they've got to do. It doesn't seem as though there's that much friction involved in it. So I think that's an example where, you're doing something that's really going to benefit the business. It causes a little bit of disruption, but as long as you explain it away, then people will buy in and support it.
Excellent. Yeah, making it as easy to digest as possible. And it's about becoming habit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Brands. Cal has written, how can IT teams get buy-in from senior leadership to take cybersecurity more seriously?
Okay, so, to be quite honest, these days, I'd expect nearly every single board, every single leadership team to have cyber right up there on their risk register. So,
Yeah.
you know, maybe you need to get someone to have a conversation around the risk register in the business and find out why cyber's not on there as one of the key risks if it's not already got some focus. Probably what's more of a challenge is getting the investment. So people understand the risk, but maybe they still don't want to spend the money on some of the key initiatives. And again, compliance or risk is a very good way to try and ensure that you can get the funding that you need to keep your organization safe.
Fantastic, Steve. That's great. There's one more question.
Yeah.
Just asking for some advice on some everyday practices that employees can adopt to strengthen cyber resilience without feeling overwhelmed. So if you were speaking to some employees of allied vehicles, what would your advice to them be?
So I think you want to try and keep it simple. You definitely don't want to overwhelm people. So, you know, just a few key things. One thing we always stress, you know, so phishing is one of the biggest challenges for any organization. And just doing something as simple as hovering over the link that's been presented to you to see where it's actually going to take you to before you click on it. That's one thing that you know everybody can get in the habit of doing very easily. And I think the second thing, you know, one piece of advice for everybody, and you know, try and get this message out into your organisation is, you know, the a no blame culture. You know, you want people to engage with you. If someone's clicked a link, someone's opened a PDF, and then afterwards they realise, oh, I shouldn't have done that. To have the ability very easily, very quickly go to your IT team and let them know, then that measure itself can prevent so much damage taking place.
So removing that fear and the shame associated
Uh,
with it so that they can react
Absolutely.
quickly.
That's it, Charlie. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Steve. That's been absolutely great. And thanks to everybody for attending. We will be having our next cyber webinar a week today, so 18th of June, where our guest speaker will be Luke Bird, Information Security Manager at City Facilities Management, and he'll be talking through bridging security IT in the business. You can get signed up today. Gillian will pop a link out in the chat. Yeah, thanks again, Steve. Really grateful to you sharing your insight and knowledge, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thank you,
Cheers, then.
Charlie. You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.